very long time, many, many minutes, to complete an SV motion. You'll want to do this carefully. And you'll also, especially as we get into storage DRS a little bit later, you'll want to plan these things out before you actually go about doing them too terribly often. Now you do have to be conscious too of the requirements that are associated with being able to do a storage vMotion. Obviously your licenses have to support the running of storage vMotion. If you don't have the right licenses purchased, you just won't be able to do storage vMotion. In the last nugget I talked about the use of persistent mode. Your virtual machine disks must be in persistent mode or they must be raw device mappings in order to support SVMotion. If you're in the process of running VMware Tools installation also, you're not going to be able to run SVMotion. And this sort of goes without saying, but whatever host the virtual machine is running on has to be able to access both the source and target data stores at the same time. So a couple of fairly minor but very important requirements that you'll have to be aware of whenever you are considering doing a storage vMotion. Really, the kind of the fun part, I think the part that really interests more people is the whole vMotion process. You know, we've been told for a very long time that vMotion is one of these really cool things that allows, for example, this running VM, VM1, to move from ESX2 to ESX1. So let's shift away from storage vMotion and shift towards just regular vMotion because it's just fun. I'll click Migrate again. All right, and this time instead of changing the data store, I'm going to change the host to move this virtual machine to another host. Now you'll notice that I have a selection of destinations that I can choose from. Here's ESX1. And before I actually am allowed to go through the process, I need to make sure that the compatibility validation does succeed. Now, vMotion itself has a set of requirements that you have to be able to fulfill before a vMotion can actually occur. Remember, a vMotion is a virtual machine that's running, and the virtual machine does not power off. And so I need to have certain similarities between the source and the target host for this entire process to work. I have to have two servers, first of all. They have to have similar processors, same manufacturer. So Intel to Intel, AMD to AMD. They also need to be relatively close in terms of the family and the stepping. Now you can actually go to VMware's site and get a list of which processor types have the ability to vMotion with other processor types. Now I won't bring it up, but check out VMware's website for the processor compatibility matrix to ensure that all of your hosts have the ability to vMotion with each other. I'll put in a little WAG here for a little bit later when we talk about clusters. There's another tool called the Enhanced vMotion Compatibility which makes this process a little bit easier. Have to have shared storage also. The virtual machine has to be able to be talked to from the different hosts that we're going to move it from. This is not a storage vMotion, this is a regular vMotion. And I also have to have vMotion available for the license type I have and have vMotion available. If you recall, when we were actually configuring the hosts here back a number of nuggets ago, we were taking a look here at networking, and when we created that VM kernel port for the management network, we went back here into properties and took a look at how we were configuring that VM kernel port. And that VM kernel port did indeed support vMotion. So another requirement here for vMotion is to make sure that you actually have vMotion enabled for a management port somewhere across all of the hosts that are going to participate in vMotion. If you miss this, you're going to fail that validation. So have that. And then come back here to the virtual machine, go back to migrate. We're going to change the host, set it up to ESX1. Well, let's see what happens. I have the ability to select whether this is going to be a high priority or a standard priority vMotion, and as you can imagine, the high priority ones go first. I'll choose next here and finish so that we can go about taking a look at how this works. You'll see here that the virtual machine is migrating. Right? It is still operating here. I can still take a look at its console, and it's doing the things that it's allowed to. Once it completes the migration here, you'll see that the migration